Hi, I'm Jason.
And I'm Ashley.
And welcome to Blackest Night Club, the sequel to our super important, super involved, super popular, I'm just making this all up, book club that is going to take you through the mega involved DC universe spanning event called Blackest Night. Now, this was a poll. How did this work, Ashley? How did we come to Blackest Night?
So you and I had a whole bunch of possible topics as a predecessor, follower-upper to Crisis on Infinite Earths. We kind of thought maybe people would pick a different Crisis, but you didn't. You voted for Blackest Night, so now we have Blackest Night Club.
Yeah, so this event, we're going to be, this book club, we're going to be going through Blackest Night. We're going to give you Easter eggs, we're going to give you theories, talk about how maybe people could do this in live action. So if you have not read Blackest Night, the DC Comics event published in 2009, there will be spoilers from this point forward. We have an official reading order, and that's how we're going to be going through this, and that's how you want to go through this if you're going to follow along. It's flashing on the screen right now. It actually should just stay on the screen longer so people can actually read it. So if you don't know what Blackest Night is, basically it is the Black Lanterns / superhero zombies of the DC Universe invade the DC Universe thanks to Hal Jordan. So that's basically it. Today's video will cover issues Green Lantern number 43, Blackest Night issue number 0, Blackest Night issue number 1, Green Lantern 44, Blackest Night 2, and there is a link to pick up Blackest Night in all its various forms down in the description below. You can get this super giant omnibus that has most of the issues, but just to let you know, like, this is the idea. Like, guys, we made that official reading order because this is too many comics. Too many comics to talk about.
But Jason, for Crisis Club, we only read one issue at a time while we were reading multiple ones this time.
Because that's the only way we could fit it in. If we didn't do it that way, like, there would be 55. There actually, there are over 100 issues of Blackest Night. We would spend the rest of our lives reading Blackest Night if we went in that detail. So we got to combine them, people. Just like the Green Lantern Corps, we got to combine them. So before we hop into the issue discussion for the very first issue, Green Lantern number 43, we have to set the stage for Blackest Night because there's a lot of stuff that happens throughout DC Comics history that sort of sets it up, and we gotta sort of loosely talk about this. So this is sort of the prelude to Blackest Night, or as like I would like to call Blackest Afternoon. Feel free to put that on screen, Adam, our wonderful editor, Adam Slechta.
Returning after Crisis Club.
Yes, he is returning. He's the Savage Sword as Adam, as we like to call him. Flash of that at Graphic Adam. He loves it that I'm giving him more stuff to do right now. Okay, so a lot of Blackest Night comes from this legendary tome called the Book of Oa, which is the text of the Guardians of the Universe. Ashley, who the hell are the Guardians of the Universe? Just in case you don't know.
They are like these 2-foot-tall, mostly bald blue dudes who created the Green Lantern Corps and all of the subsequent Guardians thereof in the different color corps.
Yes, they're basically the blue bosses of the Green Lanterns, correct. Now, in their Book of Oa, it contains a prophecy called the Blackest Night, which states, "A face of metal and flesh shall speak of the secrets of the 52. Fear will rise, willpower will gather, and a wave of light will unleash the truth behind the power of the ring." Now, the Guardians refer to this prophecy as the last hidden chapter of the Book of Oa, describing the Guardians of the Universe's final fate, and basically their ultimate purpose. But they actually forbid this prophecy to be spoke of because the Guardians are so high and mighty that they don't feel that they could ever face fear. So it was stricken from talked about in their secret clubs. Then Abin Sur, actually, who's that?
Abin Sur is the Green Lantern who is the immediate predecessor to Hal Jordan until he dies.
Yes, he is the Green Lantern of sector, what sector?
2814?
That is correct. That is our Earth sector. Now, Abin Sur, who was, again, the pre-Green Lantern to Hal Jordan's Green Lantern, he uncovered this prophecy, and the Guardians found out he was uncovered this prophecy, and they forbid him to speak of it. Now, Jeff Johns, the mastermind, the writer of this event, Blackest Night, he took inspiration from this event from an Alan Moore story, Tales of the Green Lantern Corps, Annual number 2 in 1981. This tells the original story of Abin Sur going to Yasmalt and consulting with a group called the Five Inversions. There, they tell Abin Sur about the final prophecy of the Green Lanterns. Now, Jeff Johns made that final prophecy the prophecy of the Blackest Night. He combined those two events.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't Ismail later become the home of the Red Lantern Corps?
Yes, indeed, because we're about to learn who one of the 5 inversions is. Now, this Blackest Afternoon also contains the Manhunters. Ashley, who are the Manhunters?
The Manhunters are the precursors to the Green Lantern Corps, designed by the Guardians to guard the galaxy, if you will, and they're robots who eventually turn out to be bad robots.
Exactly. Now, they rampage through Sector 666. Little on the nose there, don't we think? That is the home of the 5 inversions. Now, Atrocitus, who will later become the leader of the Red Lantern Corps, is one of the 5 inversions. And they call them the 5 inversion because they're the 5 people to have survived this attack. The Manhunters kill everybody else. So, Abin Sur learns about this prophecy. And he starts making periodic visits to Yasmald. He starts like going to chat, and he's like, hey, we're pals, right? Tell me about the Blackest Night. And they're like, because they're all monsters, basically. Abin Sur went as far to free Atrocitus from Yasmald so that he could lead him to Earth, because Atrocitus claimed that Earth was the birthplace of the Black, as foretold in the Blackest Night, the Black that would end the entire universe. Now, caged in Sur's starship, Atrocitus instilled fear in Abin Sur, allowing the yellow impurity to seep into his willpower constructs, actually causing them both to crash on Earth, and this slashed the Green Lantern Abin Sur in the chest, and this was a retcon for the reason why Abin Sur crashes on Earth, eventually gives his ring to Hal Jordan. Now, this eventually led Atrocitus to come into contact with a human that would later become known as the Black Hand, which is a future Green Lantern villain, and his energy-absorbing weapon that the Black Hand has had since the Silver Age is now retconned to have been an alien device that was given to him by Atrocitus as a device that was built to seek out the Black. So, one final part of the Blackest Afternoon that you need to know is the whole event, the Sinestro Corps War. Ashley, what is the Sinestro Corps War?
The Sinestro Corps War is an event that really cemented Jeff Johns as being the greatest writer to ever change the Green Lantern mythos, and it sees Hal Jordan's mentor, Sinestro of Korrigar, being completely taken over by the Yellow, which is seen as an impurity, creating an offshoot corps that is Yellow Lanterns, all based in fear. It's a great event.
Now, during this event, Ganthet and Said, I've never heard this name spelled out loud. It's S-A-Y-D, but she's basically a female guardian of the universe.
Yeah, they're 2 guardians.
Said? How do we want to pronounce it?
I would say Sayed, but honestly,
Sayed?
no one's going to tell us any different, so say whatever you want.
There is no I there. Let's say Sayed. Let's go with it. That's what we're going to say from here on out. Sayed. So that's what we're talking about. They are 2 banished guardians of the universe, and they explain to our 4 hero Earth Lanterns about the emotional spectrum that was created at the start of the universe. There are 7 colors. Green is willpower, yellow is fear, violet is love, red is hate, indigo is compassion, orange is greed, and blue is hope. Each represents a different emotion, and green is the center and balances the energy. And they foretell of a war of light that will lead to the Blackest Night. Okay, now we can finally start talking about the actual event of Blackest Night. Now that you have those little pieces of the Blackest Afternoon where you enjoyed your picnics and your stormy cloud days. Okay, we're gonna jump into the first issue that we're gonna read of this, Green Lantern number 43, the prologue of Blackest Night. It had the cover date of September 2009. Yes, we know the publishing date and the cover date are not the same thing. Just go with it, guys. It's the date we can see from the covers. It was written by Jeff Johns, it was penciled by Doug Mahnke, it was inked by Christian Alamy, it was colored by Randy Mayer, it was lettered by Rob Leahy, and it was edited by Eddie Berganza. All right, Ashley, we're finally to the issue. Kick us off.
I think it's really interesting choice that on the cover we see Bruce Wayne's gravestone, because Batman is the root to all stakes in the universe. Batman does become an important part in subsequent issues that we're going to talk about, but is nowhere to be seen in this issue. And this issue, as someone who is reading this for the first time and wasn't familiar with it, I found a little baffling, and I actually asked you, who is William Hand? Why does this matter? But it's interesting because this issue, without this issue, you have even less context than what you explained to us going forward, because, as you pointed out, they are basically establishing and setting up the face of the Black Lantern Corps, the person who is going to be the face of the villainousness that drives this story forward. And I think to make this such a personal issue to him was probably really startling if you'd been reading all 42 issues up to this point.
Well, we gotta say, like, this is an event that really culminates. It's a trilogy of Green Lantern events, starting with Green Lantern Rebirth, going to Sinestro Corps, going to Blackest Night. And if you haven't been following along with that stuff, you're just gonna be completely lost. And that's why I that was like the barest amount I could give you. There's so much more you need to know for this event, because this truly is a DC Universe event. And we also have to realize that the reason why they're Bruce Wayne's grave is that Final Crisis happened. Final Crisis ended this exact same year. Literally in February before this. So Bruce Wayne is killed in Final Crisis. It is actually a new thing for all the characters of this universe to have to deal with Bruce Wayne's death.
I understand, but he's not in this issue,
I know,
and we
I
don't
know.
talk about him. They only put that on the cover. It's very striking.
Yes,
because he's Batman.
And it's a thing that they never quite cleared up in the Batman Reborn event, is the fact that whether or not they revealed, because there are actually certain storylines in the Batman Reborn event where they try to fake that Bruce is still alive.
Yeah.
So it's a little weird that Bruce actually has a grave. But whatever, let's just go through it. So basically this issue, we get a repeat of Green Lantern history, and then I love, my favorite part of this issue is that we get a 2-pager, a 4-page like kind of panel spread of a bunch of important events that happen in the DC universe. Now, there is a 2-pager that it has a bunch of deaths of people that you may not know, and here they are. Here you go. So it starts with Tula, who died during the Crisis on Infinite Earth series.
Aqua Girl.
Yep, Aqua Girl. It has a bunch of deaths from 0 Hour. Al Pratt died in 0 Hour. Then Infinite Crisis, we see the death of Sue Dibney. We see the death of Firestorm. We see the death of Maxwell Lord. And then we see Infinite Crisis claiming the deaths of Ryan Kendall, Dee Tyler, Roy Lincoln, and Roj Hayden. I might be saying that wrong. And then 52 claims Vic Sage, Ralph Dibney, and Gene Lorien. And the last two are Final Crisis, which literally happened the same year, claims Arthur Light and John Jones. And then we get another spread with a bunch of resurrected heroes, including Superman and Green Lantern and Green Arrow and Captain Carrot, who's not in there at all, but I wish he was. Anyways, so then we get to Black Hand confronting his family, talking about a bunch of stuff like that. Ashley, you didn't know anything about Black Hand before this issue. This is basically the origin story of Black Hand with a bunch of other stuff. Give me your thoughts on it.
I thought this was darker than I expected it to be.
For an event called Blackest Night?
Look, I know it's an event called Blackest Night. I know it's got to do with zombies, but the level of violence in this issue is more what I expect from an Image book than what I expect from a DC book. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but that was my immediate reaction to it. And I think from that perspective, it does a good job at setting the tone and really showing us this is the type of story that you're in for. I know you've read Sinestro Corps up to this point. I know you've read Green Lantern Rebirth. Those are all bright, vibrant, colorful, hopeful, ultimately, stories, and that this is the antithesis of it. And I found it quite shocking knowing kind of what I was getting into. I think it's interesting, but I don't really know if it makes me like the character of Black Hand any more or less than when I didn't know anything about him.
Well, I mean, you're definitely not supposed to like him. That's the whole point. And he is a creepy mofo. A lot of people think that Jeff Johns is like the hopeful, idealistic writer, and he's not. If you look at his events, he's all about murder and pulling hands off and decapitation, which is rampant in this issue and is rampant in this event. And to be honest with you, a lot of people, like, if you look at Jeff Johns' works and you look at his works in the live action stuff, I mean, Jeff Johns is a producer on Batman v Superman. Jeff Johns is a producer on Titans. Jeff Johns is also responsible for the 2011 Green Lantern movie. I mean, he's not the chipperiest of dudes. Like, he's written runs where he does that.
Absolutely.
But he has more stories where it's about blood and mayhem and murder than it is anything else.
I guess I was just shocked, like, this is a DC book, and you expect DC and Marvel Comics to kind of have a certain type of story that they tell, and I was shocked that it went as dark as it did. And I think, especially when you read the first 3 issues that we're going to go through in this video, you can really tell that this story is coming from someone who is really dealing with or thinking a lot about the stages of grief. And I don't know if you've never done that yourself. I don't know if it resonates in the same way. I'm not quite sure what that experience is like, but that was a thought that I had starting with this issue and kind of reading the subsequent ones.
All right, so basically when Black Hand murders himself, Scar coughs up the first Black Lantern ring. Ashley, do you know who Scar is?
Scar is a guardian of the universe, and I guess he's the evil one?
She
is
the evil one. Actually, during the Sinestro Corps event, we actually have to back up a little bit because Scar is very important to this event. So Scar, when she vomits the Black Ring, she says that Black Hand is the embodiment of the Black Lantern Corps, much like Parallax, Ion, and Predator, which are the embodiments of the Sinestro Corps, the Green Lantern Corps, and the Star Sapphires, respectively, the entities that are like the living embodiment of that. So following the recreation of the multiverse into 52 universes in Infinite Crisis, an event also written by Jeff Johns, the Anti-Monitor was reborn into our universe. Ashley, we know a lot about that guy. Who is that dude?
The Anti-Monitor is right behind us right now, and he is the villain of Crisis on Infinite Earths. He's that big robot-looking dude.
So he is back into the universe now that the multiverse is back, and during the event of Sinestro Corps War, he is sort of conscripted into the Sinestro Corps War, and a female guardian is burned by the Anti-Monitor with their face. Eventually he was destroyed. This female guardian became known as Scar.
And it's Scar with a K, correct?
No, it's just Scar.
I thought it was a K.
No,
that's okay.
When she was burned by the Anti-Monitor, she was actually exposed to the true power behind the black. What is that power? We'll get to it. So overall thoughts on this intro issue. I thought for this first episode, in between each issue, we would talk about it, but going forward, we'll probably just do it all together. But this is only 3, Ashley. What are your overall thoughts? Again, if you were reading this event live, this wouldn't be your first issue of Blackest Night. If you're reading the trade, this would not be your first issue of Blackest Night. But in terms of the story, this is the prelude to Blackest Night, just so you know who the heck Black Hand is, because he's in a lot of this event.
I think if you were reading this at the time, I can really understand why this issue and this story would have grabbed your attention, because like I said, it kind of flies in the face of what I would have expected a DC event to be, and in that way I think it's really, really effective. I found it to be disturbing, and I suppose that's the point. How about you?
I think it's fine. I don't think there's a lot here. And to be honest with you, rereading this is, every comic book event has a filler issue. And this kind of feels like filler to me. This kind of feels like, do we really need this issue?
Well, this issue is trying to do what we do on Geek History Lesson, but in about 15 minutes instead of an hour. It is trying to explain who this character is and why they're relevant.
Yeah, sure.
You know.
I mean, the art's great. Doug Monkey can
Absolutely.
do no wrong.
Yeah. The art in all the books that we've read have been pretty good.
All right, let's move on to Blackest Night, issue 0. This was the free comic book day issue, and I still think it's the best free comic book day issue of all time. I actually still have this issue in a long box. It was published in May of 2009. It was written by Jeff Johns, penciled by Ivan Reis, inked by Eau Claire Albert and Rob Hunter, colored by Alex Leclerc, lettered by Nick Napolitano, and edited by Eddie Berganza. So the issue starts out with Barry and Hal talking about Bruce at the grave of Bruce Wayne. You finally got your wish. The grave of Bruce Wayne is finally here, Ashley.
Finally! It's not my wish, but it just seems like if it's on the cover, it should be inside for context. I actually think this issue is very smart and very well executed, because for those playing along at home, if you're not familiar, Barry recently came back from the dead, and Hal is giving a lot of exposition and kind of catching Barry up as to what has been happening in the many years since he's been dead. And because he's a Green Lantern, he's able to use his construct. So we're doing showing, even though we're also doing a lot of telling. And I think that for a comic book that is trying to do this much this quickly, I think it is so smart. Also, you get a chance to see a little crypto in the Green Lantern construct. There's actually a continuity error, I believe, because Hal tells Barry that Tim is Robin, and then in the Batman issue that we'll read a little later on, we actually see that Damian is Robin.
That is, okay, I think that's a slight publishing error, is what that is. I think, again, Batman Reborn, this free comic book day issue happens in May of 2009.
Which means it was written months before that. It
Yep.
was approved months before
But
that.
Batman and Robin, #1, written by Grant Morrison and drawn by Frank Quitely, the issue that introduces Dick Grayson as Batman and Damian as Robin is published in June. I happen to know because it came out on my birthday in that year.
Not that far back, but it is.
So technically, Tim is still Robin. So
I understand what you're saying, right?
yeah.
In terms of publication history, he is, but in terms of the fact that we're going to talk about the Batman issue in the next
episode,
video.
yeah.
But these events are happening maybe a week before the events of the first Batman issue.
Probably a
tops.
day.
I found that like a little disconcerting, but I love a mention of Tim, so I had no problem with that. I actually think this issue is, of what I've read so far, and look, I'm not super far into it. I think this is the smartest, most well-crafted issue of Blackest Night, and the fact that this is a free comic book day issue is genius. And like Jason said, this is what we should be striving for with our free comic book day issues.
I actually think every publisher should, if you're going to do an event, make issue 0, your beginner. It's the perfect way to get anybody to give a damn about your event. And again, there's nothing like too hard in this event. This it's like 3 scenes, and it sort of like sets up the stage. But if you actually read Blackest Night 1, which we're going to talk about here in a few minutes, you kind of could cut Blackest Night 0 and you'd be fine.
And also, it's funny because this issue is way less brutal
Yes.
than the Green Lantern issue that we started this with. What are your thoughts on the issue?
Well, let's talk about this. You're talking about publishing history and things about that. It's very funny that this Flash scene is all about catching up Barry, because you know what else was happening this year?
What?
Flash Rebirth.
Oh, well,
So Flash,
Jeff is just working on his own synergy.
Flash came back in Final Crisis, which I said ended at the beginning of this year, literally like 2 months ago. Flash Rebirth is being published at this very moment, and Flash Rebirth, I think originally was planned to end before Blackest Night, but guess what happened?
Publishing delays?
Publishing delays, artist delays.
That sounds familiar.
Ethan Van Sciver was the artist of Flash Rebirth and delayed the series several times. Actually, Flash Rebirth, I don't even think ends in 2009. I think it goes into the next year, and it started before Blackest Night. So it's funny, like, again, the timelines are all, because if you've ever read Flash Rebirth, you really get the impression that happens 100% before Blackest Night. They are not consistent. Like, it is before Blackest Night, which is something we will talk about as we get to the Blackest Night Flash issues.
Yes.
I also thought, let's talk about a little bit, a lot of this issue is characters looking at their dead loved ones.
Hero Day.
I want to explain, if you're very confused about Aquaman's death. Aquaman is dead at this point in the DC timeline because after Infinite Crisis, Aquaman was morphed into a weird squid creature, and there was a new younger Aquaman that was introduced in a series called Aquaman Sword of Atlantis, written by Kurt Busiek. I don't think the series is that bad, but still, Aquaman being turned into a squid creature is weird. He died as the squid creature. That is what they're talking about in that. But very quickly, Black Hand says the oath, and then everything gets reborn. And if you read the original Free Comic Book Day issue, at the end of the actual issue, Jeff Johns wrote a letter to everybody, and I thought I would read some pieces of it.
Sure.
Here. So this is from, I'm quoting Jeff Johns at the back of the Free Comic Book Day issue, Blackest Night 0. He said that the stories over the next 2 years in Green Lantern laid the foundation for Sinestro Corps, and the stories ever since then have laid the foundation for Blackest Night. Although Blackest Night will be no doubt dubbed an event, it is and has always been a story I wanted to tell since I took the reins of Green Lantern. It's a tale about the darkness those that wield the lantern rings must shine their light on. It's a tale about the nature of death in the universe of superheroes, and like all Green Lantern stories, it's a tale about overcoming your fears. Blackest Night will recharge the DC universe. Now, we're going to learn what he means by that going on, but I thought that was a nice little thing. I agree. I think this is a great Free Comic Book Day, and I think I want to just keep on trucking right into Blackest Night 1. All right, now we're going to talk about Blackest Night #1, cover date of September 2001, written by Jeff Johns, penciled by Yvonne Reese, inked by Auclair Albert, colored by Alex Sinclair, lettered by Nick Napolitano. I'm going to screw that name up every time.
Can you give us the cover date again? Because you said 2001, and that can't possibly be true.
September 2009.
Thank you.
Edited by Eddie Berganza and Adam Slagman. And let's talk about this. Basically, the black rings shoot out everywhere.
Yes, and they say flush, flush, flush. We see a whole bunch of the cemeteries as well for Hero Day, which is where you might not know this. I don't know if Hero Day existed before here or not, but I like the idea that there is an International Day of Mourning for the fallen heroes, because I think if you lived in a DC type universe, I think that would be like a nice, like a Veterans Day or a Memorial Day. I think that's great. And you can see the Ray in the Valhalla Cemetery, and that made me smile. He's wearing the same costume as our action figure.
I like that idea. No, this is a brand new idea, and I like the idea of it being on the day Superman was killed by Doomsday. It's one of the great things.
I tip my hat to you, Jeff Johns.
So we also get a quick page of all the death of all the loves of the Green Lantern lives, like it's foreshadowing that all these people are going to come back to life, because of course they will. And you know, of course, some of those people are Kat Matui, who is the love of Jon Stewart. We have Alex, who was the love of Kyle Rayner, who created the term created by Frigging. We have, I don't remember, Ice from Green Lantern, a bunch of other people because I don't have the issue in front of me. But then we go to Smallville, and they're mourning the death of Jonathan Kent. That is because Jonathan Kent had just been killed by Brainiac in the Superman Brainiac event, written
by Jeff Johns. Imagine that. And he said this wasn't an event.
Yes. And then when all these twists happen, you know, we see all these other heroes and stuff like that. Alfred finds out that Bruce's grave has been defiled.
Yeah.
Which is, of course, an event that we saw earlier. Ashley, I want to talk to you about your thoughts about the superhero morgue that is in the bottom of the Hall of Justice. By the way, Hall of Justice at this point was a relatively new concept to the DC Universe, introduced in the Brad Meltzer run post-Infinite Crisis.
Do you mean the morgue, or do you mean that all the villains are down there?
Well, it's a little bit of both. It's basically like a morgue for the supervillains, but there are some heroes in there too.
I think it makes sense that they would have a morgue there because, of course, the Justice League operates, it seems like, with healthy international relations.
Sure.
So as a pseudo-military cum police force, of course they would be able to conduct their own investigations there, do autopsies, things like that. I thought it was kind of weird that they were keeping the villains there. And
that is a tie-in.
And to what?
That is a tie-in to Peter J. Tomasi at this point, before Batman Reborn was writing Nightwing, and the story was about a crime syndicate that was stealing supervillains to, like, absorb their blood, steal their powers. And so that is a reference to a Peter J. Tomasi Nightwing storyline that had happened maybe 6 months before.
But I think it's an interesting, and I think it's an intelligent choice, and they do address the weirdness of it existing in the story itself, where they say that they don't want people desecrating their corpses or defiling them either, because even though they're bad, they don't deserve that, and they don't want that for their families. Yeah. And that's a very heroic point of view, that they deserve to rest in peace just like everyone else. And as soon as you see all the names, you know they're all coming back to cause more heck.
Did you notice which coffin that the Flash lingered over?
No.
He lingered over the coffin of the Psycho Pirate. The villain that was responsible in part and parcel for his own death.
Yes, and a huge part of Crisis, of course.
Yes.
No, I didn't note that because I was trying to read all of them, and then the type gets little. But this issue kind of culminates and ends with our first hero casualties.
Who's that?
The Hawks.
Oh, yes. I was going to ask you about the Hawks, because the Hawks scenes deal very much with Ray Palmer, the Atom, dealing with the events of Identity Crisis, where his wife, Jean Loring, found out to have murdered Sue Dibney. And Hawkman's kind of like, just get over it, man. But also they're dealing with the idea that at this point in the continuity, I believe it is it Chandra? I think it's Chandra or Ken.
It's Kendra.
Is it Kendra's Hawk Girl?
Yes.
And so the idea is the Hawks.
And she can't remember, and he can.
He can remember the reincarnation. She can't remember reincarnations. So he's like, hey, you're my wife. And she's like, ooh, creepy, dude. And it kind of seems like they kind of bury the hatchet. They kind of figure it all out, which of course means that they're all gonna die. Okay, so we really quickly want to talk about the Guardians of the Universe are concerned. They can tell the War of Light is raging. They can sense the Black Lantern rings are across the universe, and they are like, oh crap, Ganthet and Saeed were right. We should put out an alarm to all the Green Lanterns. But before they can do that, Scar comes in and captures them all. And then the Black Lanterns rise, and we end with what I think is a badass last page drawn by Yvonne Reese of Black Lantern Martian Manhunter.
Yes.
So, but also we got to talk about there is a little bit of a problem here at the very end because we get the Hawk people die, Hawkman and Hawkgirl die. Feelings on that? Do you care?
I don't. I'm really sorry. If you love the Hawks, I hope this was a moving moment for you.
What do you think about them being killed by Zombie Sue and Ralph Dibny?
It's weird. It's weird. I think ultimately it should have been Adam, really, but I understand.
Well, he's alive.
No, they should have killed the Atom.
Oh,
they should have killed
yes.
Ray.
Oh,
because
got it.
Because he's tied to Jean.
Sorry, getting the murders confused, everybody.
But I think bringing them back was interesting, and using them in this way was interesting. And Elastic Man has never looked more frightening, and he looks pretty frightening most of the time.
There's a continuity error here.
Oh, good. Do you wear the wrong costume?
As a fan, no, everybody's getting their own Black Lantern costumes, so it's fine. As a fan of one of my favorite series, 52, the weekly series that told the 1 year later time after Infinite Crisis, Elongated Man was killed by the devil of the DC Universe, Neuron, and had his fingers torn off. Mm-hmm. This Black Lantern, Ralph Dibny, has all his fingers, has all his digits.
Well, maybe they're actually little stubbies, but he grew them plastically.
The only reason I call that out is because in other parts of the event, the Black Lanterns have the injuries. Of how they were killed. Like, you'll see, I don't know if we'll talk about any of the issues that we're going to talk about, but Black Lantern Max Lord is, like, his head is turned backwards.
Oh, yeah.
And stuff like that. So they don't automatically heal. You know, I can give it a pass. It's whatever. It just means that Jeff Johns didn't read the scenes of 52 that he didn't write. Because he wrote scenes of 52.
Some of them, yeah.
Anyways, so next we're talking about Green Lantern number 44. It has the cover date of September 2009. It was written by Jeff Johns. It was penciled by Doug Monkey, the best. Inked by Christian Alamy, Doug Monkey, Tom Nguyen, and Rodney Ramos. It was colored by Randy Mayer, lettered by Rob Lee, and edited by Eddie Berganza. We got to talk about that cover right off the bat. Martian Manhunter, fighting Flash, fighting Green Lantern. Doug Monkey, kicking ass.
Always.
There's something really quickly here. Okay, so John Jones is like the first redesigned Black Lantern we see. Now, if you buy the omnibus, you can see they have the designs for the artist did these where they sort of redesign all the Lanterns' costumes. To be honest with you, I like most of the Black Lantern redesigns. Now, most of that is because it looks like their original costumes, but I actually especially really like the Martian Manhunter Black Lantern design. I think it's really cool.
Tiara that they give him on his head.
So,
it's a really weird choice, but it's cool.
Do you know why?
No.
Because the top of the Black Lantern symbol
is the triangle.
Is a top. It's a hand.
Yeah.
But it's the top of the Black Lantern symbol.
That's
is what it is. So you'll see in the same video, Black Lantern Superman has that same design too. We gotta talk about. It starts off with a Choco cookie. This issue.
Well, that's because the top of the pyramid, wherein he is buried on Mars, is topped with the top. That little pyramid on the top is made of chocos.
No.
Yes.
No, it's not.
Yes.
No, actually, the Choco cookie, I believe, if I remember right.
I know, but it's funnier if it's.
I know. It's like the moon made of cheese.
No, someone puts it in his grave.
It's either
in his tomb, rather.
It happened in Final Crisis. It's either Superman or Batman.
It's probably Superman.
I think it's Batman. I could be wrong about that.
My poor sweet Martian baby, they won't let him rest.
Yep.
He has a beautiful, by the way, a beautiful sarcophagus. It's like stunning. It looks like Snow White.
So this issue tracks back a little bit from Blackest Night #1, where we track back with Barry and how in the graveyard, of course, Bruce Wayne's grave.
And they discover that.
Yes, and we discover, of course, that the skull has been taken. Nothing else has been taken. Now, also, I want you to note that there are a couple moments in this issue, especially on this very beginning page, where Barry Allen kind of gets a little like weird black like across his face, and he's like, it's like he's connecting.
Hal gets an injury like that somewhere else as well. Like they both get kind of marks on their face.
Yes.
Now they both died.
It's because they both died and resurrected, and you'll learn more about that. But this issue is basically a giant fight between Martian Manhunter, Green Lantern, and
Flash.
So, okay, we want to talk about this moment. This is the moment we're going to talk. Early on in this issue, there are moments where Flash, he has the yellow fear, and Green Lantern has the green will, and this is how Martian Manhunter sees them. Now, I'm not going to exactly give away the reasoning now, but...
No, but if you're familiar with the action figures, you might be able to figure it out.
But the Black Lanterns are trying to get people to feel a full emotion, and then they're basically going to rip their hearts out.
Yes.
And also, we get the first ominous section here where we go to Oa, where we see the Scar with the other Guardians, and it says, some ethereal voice, power levels 0.07.
0.75, yes.
0.075%. That will become important later.
On the page that immediately precedes that, Martian Manhunter literally lifts up a fire hall and dumps it on someone. And he says, I'm as powerful as Superman. Why does everyone forget that? And that is a point that you and I bring up quite often. And so it kind of made me chuckle as I was reading this at 1 a.m.
I tracked that back to I think it's a Grant Morrison reference, because that's where I first got that. When Grant Morrison was writing JLA, he'd always talk about how Martian Manhunter is just as powerful as Superman, but he thinks that nobody likes him because he's green.
Mm-hmm.
And we get quick, real check-ins with the other Lantern Corps here across the universe.
It's not going great for them.
Yeah. Now, I will say that this issue I really like because, and I want to talk about this because generally, comic book events, they stretch stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have these other issues like Green Lantern and Green Lantern Corps tie-in, they're waste of time. You're like, why did we publish this? But I really feel giving the time here to the Martian Manhunter Green Lantern Barry fight actually makes the event feel bigger, because if they had just left this in the main event, it would have been 3-4 pages max, and this way we get to spend that time with John Jones.
Also, when we're checking in with the other Lantern Corps and they're sort of infighting, which is heralding this Blackest Night event, you get to see Glomulus, and that's a big plus for me.
Yes, Glomulus.
Big fan.
Okay, so basically this whole issue leads to the very end where John is, of course, romanticizing about Xanshi, the planet that destroyed the planet of Katmatui. And as you can predict, we know what's going to happen. All the Black Lanterns go there, and all the dead people of Xanshi rise in an epic 2-page spread.
It looks so good. Even though we're seeing Jon Stewart from the back, he looks awesome.
Yes, he looks great.
Awesome.
All right, so now we're going to move into Blackest Night number 2.
With the cover that we now put on all of the collections.
Yes, I want to talk about that cover. Of course, a cover date of October 2009, written by Jeff Johns, penciled by Yvonne Reese, inked by Eau Claire Albert, Julio Ferreira, colorist by Alex Sinclair, lettered by Nick Napolitano. I'm going to get that name by the end of Blackest Night Club, I swear to God. Edited by Eddie Berganza. All right, so I want to talk about this cover, because this cover is the cover you see on a lot of the collections of Blackest Night, and there's a lot of little Easter eggs in this thing, which I think are really cool.
Batman.
You get you see the bat ears and the bat signal. You see Blackest Night Superman, which we have not met up to this time. We also get we're gonna meet Black Lantern Aquaman in this issue, and then of course John Jones there as well.
Yeah.
It's a very cool cover.
It is super cool. That's why they put it on the collections.
I want to skip past the Atom, and I want to get to Gotham City.
I love this scene between the Gordons.
Yes.
Anytime we get the Gordons together, I love it. The dialogue is so good here because Jim is talking about Batgirl and what happened to her. And if you ask me, Jim absolutely knows that it was Babs and knows what happened to her. And that makes the scene even more poignant because everyone's about to die.
I wanted to talk about that exact moment, and I'm so glad you got, because Jim Gordon says, when Batgirl disappeared, no one knew what exactly had happened to her, but everyone knew it was Bat. Again, implying that Commissioner Gordon knows that his daughter was Batgirl. I think Commissioner Gordon knows exactly who Batman is.
I think he knows who everyone in the Bat
It's funny because this was actually confirmed post Infinite Crisis that Jim Gordon did know that Barbara Gordon was Batgirl.
There's that epic panel where he's looking out the window and she's like hiding away from him.
Birds of Prey number 89 is the exact issue with that. But we gotta talk about Green Lantern landing right in the middle of the bat signal. Talk about a splash page.
It's funny.
I actually think it's very funny. And I think it's a great moment too, because it's combining these two worlds. Like, you don't generally see Green Lantern with Commissioner Gordon.
No, you're absolutely right. Man, Commissioner Gordon would have no patience for house nonsense.
Now, Ashley, do you have any thoughts about Mara and Garth in this issue? Because Mara is later going to become a very important part of Blackest Night. I know you're a fan of Mara.
I like Mara a lot. I don't understand why Mara's wearing a push-up bra underwater, but that's sort of a continuous argument that I have with women in superhero.
Let's say Atlantean science.
Women in superhero comics. I like this scene, and I'm really coming to like this storyline because Mara is low-key way more powerful than Aquaman has ever dreamed of being, because she's a waterbender.
Yes.
She's not, like, there's a king who has replaced Arthur, and it's Garth, but I like that Mara, as I guess Queen Dowager, former Queen of Atlantis, she's so powerful in these scenes.
And I really enjoy watching her being able to take charge. She's not in this issue for too long. And then I love a couple pages later that when she's confronted with Black Lantern and Aquaman, she doesn't hesitate. She stabs that guy right in the chest, and she is ready to save her. I think Mara's great in this issue.
Yeah, she's great in this whole event. We got to talk about real quick the graves of Hank and Dawn Hall, the original Hawk and Dove. Now, the Rings try to recruit them, and the ring sent for Dove is unable to raise him because he is at peace.
Yes, and Hawk and Dove they don't use the word paragon, they use an avatar.
Yes.
They become the avatar of like light and dark and life
Now,
and death and war and love.
This will matter later on into the series, so we'll talk about that. I also want to talk about there's a graveyard scene later on where a bunch of the magical characters of the DC universe show up.
Yes.
And we get a cameo from a little old person, Ashley, that we know from the first Crisis, named Pariah.
I wrote in my notes, Pariah's in this question?
Yes, that's because Jeff Johns loves Crisis on Infinite Earths, and that he is going to reference it as many
as he should.
So we meet Black Lantern Pariah, who gives a Black Lantern ring to Crispus Allen. Ashley, do you know who Crispus Allen is? One of my favorite DC comic characters of all time.
He's isn't he the Spectre?
He is the Spectre, but
he's a detective.
He was Renee Montoya's partner in Gotham Central. And spoilers for the end of Gotham Central, he dies, and he becomes the second Spectre after Hal Jordan. This gives a Black Lantern ring to Crispus Allen, which basically makes the Spectre a Black Lantern, although
I want
continuity issue
Hal
here.
Jordan
Technically, a Black Lantern ring attaching the Spectre is sort of a mistake. The Spectre attaches to a human host, not a dead host.
But the 2-page spread, which you have to turn your book sideways for, which is a mite bit difficult with this, is pretty cool.
Yeah. Now, I want to talk about the moment at the very end of the issue, Ashley. Is there anything else you would like to talk about?
Hal Jordan gets a flash fact.
That's very cool.
Really cute, actually. I don't think Hal's very funny or cute, and I like that moment.
Yes. All right, so at the very end of the issue, we think we've burned John Jones, but then he brings together a Black Lantern Justice League full of Hawkman, Hawkgirl, Elongated Man, Sue Dibney, and Firestorm. I just love that he has a Black Lantern Justice League, and I actually think that is a great cliffhanger for the issue.
If you're wondering at home, this is Ronnie Raymond.
Yes.
Firestorm, because I know there's been like 9 of them.
Yes, Jason Rush will tie into this issue later on.
Yes, he will.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about Blackest Night Legacy, where we're going to talk about how the events have lingered in the DC comic book universe, and do we think we'll see any part of this in a movie? Actually, let's just flat out put it on Front Street right now. Do you think Blackest Night... One, do you think Blackest Night still affects the DC universe?
Yes.
And okay, cool. And 2, do you think we'll ever see Blackest Night as in live action somehow?
Soft, yes.
Okay, what's the soft part of that?
So they've been claiming for about 100,000 years.
I don't think comic books have been around that long.
I don't think people have been around that long. That we're getting this Green Lantern Corps movie.
Sure.
It's this one, and it's the Blue and Gold movie.
And now it's like an HBO Max series.
And they've been talking about this for so long that I don't believe it anymore.
Yeah.
I won't believe it till I see it. It was how I felt about the Deadpool movie. I would not believe it until I saw it. But I do think, unless something happens and Jeff Johns goes and does something else or steps away from film or whatever, or TV, I think because he basically got to put his hands on everything in the comic book universe, and now he's taking everything that he ever did in comics and is doing them in television and movies, including Stargirl. And so I think if he has anything to do with either a movie or a TV series, whichever version of that is going to go, I think it'll be the exact same build. I think we'll get a version of Rebirth because we're going to establish Hal as our hero. You can call it the Corps. If Jeff is involved, you know it's going to be Hal Jordan because he thinks that Hal Jordan's the greatest character who's ever been made. The second version, logically, would be Sinestro. You introduce Sinestro as just like the original movie did. And then Blackest Night, because Blackest Night still lingers in popularity. You put it on our Geek History lesson for one of your favorite DC events.
I mean, there's a reason why I was happy to buy the omnibus.
There's a reason.
It's a good event, everybody. It's a great event.
It's still being published. There's a reason why we're still buying the action figures. So I think if we ever get a live-action version of Green Lantern off the ground, especially while Jeff Johns is still alive, I think there is a good chance it will happen. But right now, when we're making this video, as far as I know, it's not going.
The Green Lantern show.
Yeah.
Not Blackest Night.
No, yeah, the Green Lantern show or movie or web series or however is not actively going. It might be in some form of pre-pro. So, I don't know. So, I guess I'm going to 50-50. Do you think we're likely to see Blackest Night?
Yes, 100%. I don't know when. That's the key factor.
Yes,
is when.
of course.
I mean, because when you think about it, a perfect movie trilogy for Green Lantern is introduce Green Lantern, movie 2 is Sinestro, movie 3 is Blackest Night. But I don't know if you get enough time with the story there. So I would argue, let's say we have Green Lantern Corps, the TV show on HBO Max. We get 5 seasons with 13 episodes. Season 1 is, the Green Lanterns and da-da-da-da-da. Season 2 is Sinestro Goes Bad. Season 3 is Sinestro Corps. Season 4 is, oh man, there's all these other colors. Season 5, Blackest Night. And then what you do is in each season, a main character drops so that they all come back in the final season. I think that's the best way to go. We will see. I mean, the difference is in comic books, there's billions and millions of characters, so we won't ever see it this big.
Yes, of course.
But we will see a version of this. I guarantee you.
I mean, we
will
saw
see the
a
Black
version
Lanterns.
of Crisis on Infinite Earths, so anything is possible.
We did. I mean, to be honest with you, I don't know how they would do it. There's a chance. I've heard a lot of people saying, like, there is a chance that we talked about this in one of our videos on the YouTube channel, that the Arrowverse could do a version of Blackest Night and use Blackest Night to introduce the Green Lantern Corps into their universe. It's possible.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Jason, how are the tie-in issues to Blackest Night?
Well, most of them are not great. That's the reason I put the great ones in here. But I actually bought all of them when this came out. I bought this whole event when it came out. And the reason why I bought Starman 81, Power Shazam number 48, and The Question number 37 is because the brilliant DC Comics editors or marketing people did a thing where these other tie-ins, see, because Power Shazam wasn't being published at the time. Power Shazam actually was canceled at 47. So this is 48, and they would give you like a red ring. And then Starman ended with issue 80. In this event, we get Starman 81, and they would give you a blue ring. The only way you could get every single ring was to buy these special tie-in issues, which of course I did because I wanted all the rings.
And the hilarious thing, and I can say this as someone who's worked at 2 different comic book stores, is retailers to this day are still drowning in those plastic rings.
That's correct. So now you don't have to buy those tie-in issues at all, and you don't have to read them at all, but in case you want to do, there you go. All right, so that's it, everybody. Thank you, everyone on Patreon, for making Blackest Night happen. We could only done it without you. Thank you for watching. I am Jason.
I am Ashley.
And watch out. Keep your heart safe. Blackest Night Club.